All right, so assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. If you didn't notice or didn't see yet, I had added a little bit of a summary in the first tab on the spreadsheet of the chapter, which sort of gives an overview of some of the major themes in this chapter. I think that would be helpful because sometimes, like with Adam, we took quite a while to get through it, and sometimes we lose track of what the through line is in the chapter. And I thought it might be helpful for us to have a little bit of an overview with some of the keywords and such. So that's there. And then Ervina,
Assalamu alaikum. Last time I took notes here on Zoom, and then I couldn't take those notes back somehow. And it was my first time taking notes here, so I couldn't access them. Can you please send them if you have them?
in the notes function.
Yeah. And then you joined another class. That's why maybe we couldn't just access them.
See. Usually what I have to do is I have to like copy and paste them. I can send a link to the note, but for some people it doesn't work. So usually I copy and paste them into a document that we have so I can go back and pull them all and put them in the document. And I'm just sharing the note to the group now. So if anybody wants to take notes in the note section, that's available there now. And then later we can go back and Edwina, I'll put the notes into the shared document. So let's see.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it might be helpful to just recap what we read last time. So we just started the chapter on Seth, Sheath, alayhi salam. And maybe if just one person wants to volunteer to read the Arabi for the first section, and then I'll read the English, and then from there we can move on into the next section, just to give us context. Anybody at all? Amira, please.
So are we going to read the same section as last time or?
Just to recap, the first one.
Okay, okay. اعلم أن العطايا والمنح الظاهرة في الكون على أيدي العباد وعلى غير أيديهم على قسمين، منها ما يكون عطايا ذاتية وعطايا أسمائية، وتتميز عند أهل الأذواق، كما أن منها ما يكون عن سؤال في معين وعن سؤال غير معين، ومنها ما لا يكون عن سؤال سواء كانت الأعطية ذاتية أو أسمائية. فالمعين كمن يقول يا رب أعطني كذا، فيعين أمرا ما لا يخطر له سواه، وغير المعين كمن يقول أعطني ما تعلم فيه مصلحتي من غير تعيين، لكل جزء من ذاتي من لطيف وكثيف.
Mashallah. So he says, know that the gifts and blessings manifest in the universe, whether through the hands of people or through other means, are of two types: essential gifts and attributive gifts, which can be distinguished by those who possess deep spiritual insight. Some of these gifts result from specific supplication, dua, some from general supplication, and others come without any supplication, whether they are essential or attributive. A specific supplication is like someone who says, O Lord, grant me such and such, specifying a particular matter without considering anything else. A general supplication is like someone who says, grant me what you know to be best in my interest, to be in my best interest, without specifying any particular matter, covering all aspects of their being, whether subtle or physical. So, or whether subtle or dense. Um, so basically he's talking about what we receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the way in which the worshiper orients towards their relates to supplication and relates to Allah through their posturing, right? And it's sort of, the gifts that we receive are sort of congruent with the way that we posture, the way that we supplicate towards God. So um, this is going to be basically the entire theme of the chapter, and then at the end of the chapter, he gives some very interesting prophecies about the end of times, and very quite specific. And so it's interesting. Um, so before we let's see. I guess we'll get three readers, and then Dr. Faris, do you want to help lead out on explaining the next section?
Sure thing.
Right. So can we get three readers for this next section? What would be uh, line 3 in the text? Okay. Abdullah can start, please.
Yes, thank you very much. والسائلون صنفان، صنف بعثه على السؤال الاستعجال الطبيعي فإن الإنسان خلق عجولا، والصنف الآخر بعثه على السؤال لما علم أن ثم أمورا عند الله قد سبق العلم بأنها لا تنال إلا بعد السؤال، فيقول: فلعل ما نسأله فيه سبحانه يكون من هذا القبيل، فسؤاله احتياط لما هو الأمر عليه من الإمكان، وهو لا يعلم ما في علم الله ولا ما يعطيه استعداده في القبول، لأنه من أغمض المعلومات الوقوف في كل زمان فرض على استعداد الشخص في ذلك الزمان، ولولا ما أعطاه الاستعداد السؤال ما سأل.
شكرا. Need two more. I can be one of those two if we have one more. Okay. So I'll read and then the next person can go. وسائلون صنفان، صنف بعثه على السؤال الاستعجال الطبيعي فإن الإنسان خلق عجولا، وصنف الآخر بعثه على السؤال لما علم عن ثم أمورا
ثم ثم ثم
ثم أمورا عند الله قد سبق العلم بأنها لا تنال إلا بعد السؤال، فيقول فلعل ما نسأل فيه سبحانه يكون من هذا القبيل، فسؤاله احتياط لما هو الأمر عليه من الإمكان، وهو لا يعلم ما في علم الله وما يعطيه استعداده في القبول، لأنه من عم أغمد المعلومات الموقوف في كل زمان فرد على استعداد الشخص في ذلك الزمان، ولولا ما أعطاه الاستعداد السؤال ما سأل.
Great,
Okay.
thanks Gita.
One more reader. Let's go with Zinira.
ما شاء الله، بسم الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والسائلون صنفان، صنف بعثه على السؤال الاستعجال الطبيعي فإن الإنسان خلق عجولا، والصنف الآخر بعثه على السؤال لما علم أن ثم أمورا عند الله قد سبق العلم بأنها لا تنال إلا بعد السؤال. فيقول: فلعل ما نسأله فيه سبحانه يكون من هذا القبيل، فسؤاله احتياط لما هو الأمر عليه من الإمكان، وهو لا يعلم ما في علم الله ولا ما ولا ولا ما يعطيه استعداده في القبول، لأنه من أغمض المعلومات الوقوف في كل زمان فرد على استعداد الشخص في ذلك الزمان، ولولا ما أعطاه الاستعداد ولولا ما أعطاه الاستعداد السؤال ما سأله.
Great, thank you so much, Zanira. Jazakallah khairan. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So just before I begin, I just want to say it's so fascinating how the books to the awliya can be used to comment and make commentaries on one book over the other. It's just like what Sidi Ali was saying about the poetry of Ibn al-Farad, قدس الله سره, and the Futuhat al-Makkiyah that could be used to comment on his poetry. So similarly, what I found is that the writings of Jalaluddin Rumi, like for example his Fihi Ma Fihi, could easily be used to comment on the works of Sheikh al-Akbar very easily. So it's just really uncanny seeing that right here. So one example is that one of the knowers of God, or one of the Salikun, one of the people who are traversing the paths of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their suluk towards him, or towards the ma'rifah of him, they know that there are some things that cannot be obtained unless you ask for them. So there's a parable or an example in Maulana Rumi's book Fihi Ma Fihi, where he's talking about like a halwa shop, like a halwa shop or a halwa shop. And he's like, if you want the halwa, you got to go out. You have to go out and go start looking for the halwa. You have to actually go look for the sweets, if you like. And then that's when you can start receiving it. Or you have to go out and search in go out in search of what you are looking for. And then that's when you can receive it. So it's just amazing to see how the awliya Allah are like very much on the same page, or they think the same way, subhanAllah. So let's start by talking about the connection of this fuss to the previous fuss. Now, one of the things you'll notice as you go throughout the Fusus al-Hikam, if we live that long and finish the book, is you'll see all these interconnections that come between one fuss and the other very easily, and that's done on purpose. The Fusus al-Hikam is a very what's the word I'm looking for? It's not just a unique book, but it's done in a very deliberate manner. I mean, yeah. Hopefully it'll just be a couple of years, inshallah. But so there are these connections where one fuss intersects with another fuss very easily, and you see this all throughout the Fusus al-Hikam. So it is structured and organized and written in such a way, really it's revealed, if you believe that it is revealed by Rasulullah, which is what Sheikh al-Akbar mentions in the beginning of the Fusus al-Hikam. It was given to him by Rasulullah. So it's technically not his book. Now, how literally does Sheikh al-Akbar take that? Well, the Emir Abdul Qadir Jazairi was commenting on one of these chapters of the Fusus al-Hikam. Maybe it was Fasl al-Qman. And then the Sheikh al-Akbar tells him in a vision, you know, most of the commentators did not understand what he meant by that. And then the Emir just paused for a second. And he's like, he just used the Damir al-Ghaib. Who's he talking about? And then it hits him. He meant Rasulullah. So Sheikh al-Akbar means it quite literally when he says this book is pretty much written and delivered by Rasulullah to Sheikh al-Akbar, even though you can hear the Sheikh al-Akbar's voice in it. Anyways, so you see these interconnections where one fuss intersects with another fuss, and you're going to see that a lot. And that resembles the Quran a great deal. You'll see how surahs interconnect and overflow into one another very easily. And so that's not a coincidence, because a lot of the, or rather all of the Shaykh al-Akbar's writings are structured on the Quran itself. He is unable to do it in any other way. I don't know if I've spoken about this before. If I have, tell me so I can shut up and move on to something else. But this is similar to art. Like there's a book called Therese Rakan, written by Emile Zola, where he discusses one of the antagonists who murders a woman's husband in a fit of lust, right? And so before that, he was a poor artist, but because the event impacted him so powerfully, he became a masterful artist after the murder, according to Emile Zola. But then, what one of the observers noticed is that in his studio, all he could do was paint the same thing, which is the face of the man he murdered, right? Because now his psychological makeup is now built upon that one paradigmatic event in his life. So these things exist in the spiritual world, and not in this, not in the muddy world of psychology, but in the spiritual world. When the Quran mixes with your dam and your lahma, your blood and your flesh, then you act in accordance to the structure of the Quran itself, right? And one of the du'as of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq anhu, who features in this fuss as well, he's in this fuss, is to ask Allah to mix the Quran with our blood and our flesh, so that when you are acting through the Quran and in the Quran. You perceive reality through the Quran, and rather reality is the Quran, since the great cosmos is the great big book, and the little book is the Quran, and one is the transcription of the other. So, having gotten through this lengthy introduction, what is the connection between Fas Adam and Fas Sheath? Even though that's a rather obvious connection, because Fas Sheath comes after Fas Adam, right? I'd like to hear from you, if possible, briefly. What do you think the connection is between Fas Sheath and Fas Adam? Fas Adam is about being the Khalifa, isn't it? Khalifatullah ala ard, right? And it is because you are upon the divine form, al-Surat al-Ilahiyya. Once this person has realized this reality within himself, he has the right to be Allah's Khalifa ala ard. Any Khalifa now requires tools to govern creation, and to help creation, and to assist creation. That's through the divine asking. Al-Ataya al-Ilahiyya, and the divine gifts that are bestowed upon him. So this is an ilm. It is a science which the Khalifa is in need of, this entire fuss. So if you establish what the Khalifa is, Zahiran and Batinan, in the previous fuss, then this fuss is about what are the ulum he needs in order to govern creation, right? Even though the Shaykh al-Akbar doesn't say that explicitly in those words, this is what comes up. And this is in the case none more so than in the case of the Khatam al-Awliya, the highest of those individuals. Now, I'm torn as to whether I want to talk about him in this fuss or not, because it's a bit early. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm getting ahead of myself or not, but we'll see. We'll see if it is appropriate or not. Now, if that is the case, and really the rest of the Fusus al-Hikam, right, as Shaykh al-Akbar's summary of the Fusus al-Hikam, the Naqsh al-Fusus makes clear, the rest of the chapters in the sciences are dedicated to these ulum which the Khalifa will need, and he needs to govern humanity and creation. And there's all sorts of ulum, and how do we use these ulum? So the gift, or sorry, the ilm of gift giving and receiving gifts is certainly one of these knowledges. So for example, just like when someone is doing juhud, badal al-juhud, or his ijtihad, I don't mean intellectual ijtihad, I mean the physical ijtihad of striving to support your family and striving to maintain and take care of yourself. Since there's a hadith in which Rasulullah says that your wife has a haqq over you, and your family have a haqq over you, and your guest has a haqq over you, Your eye has a haqq over you. Your hands and your bodies have hukuk on you. So you're the Khalifa of your own body as well. And being the Khalifa of your own body, then it is your job to fulfill the needs of your family and your own body as well. So the Wali, Allah treats his body as a stranger, which means that just as other people have rights, your body has a right as well. So we're far away from the picture that we see often from individuals we might call zuhad, even though zuhud is a praiseworthy quality, which is asceticism. People from other traditions who might flagellate the body, who might harm the body, thinking that the body is a source of evil. It's not. It is another creation that is under your hand and has rights. And it is from its rights that you guide it. So this is why the Shaykh al-Akbar distinguishes between the walaya of Sayyidina Halaj alayhi salam and also the walaya of Sayyidina Uwais al-Qarni radiallahu anhu alayhi salam. So the walaya of Uwais al-Qarni is higher than the walaya of al-Halaj. Why? Because al-Halaj, he used to treat his body as belonging to himself. So he would undertake very difficult exercises in order to almost punish his body. And he would fast for lengthy periods and undergo great struggles in order to say to the body and therefore to his nafs, I'll show you who's who. Uwais al-Qarni wasn't like that. And this is the Shaykh al-Akbar making this connection in his book, Ruh al-Quds fi Munasahat al-Nafs, or fi Muhasabat al-Nafs. When she says, Uwais al-Qarni was someone who viewed his nafs as a stranger. He did not take it personally, and he did not take his nafs. He did not take his nafs personally. He gave it its right when it had a right, and he did not allow it to go into excess in order to mislead him. So he says that the walay, this is why the walay of Uwais al-Qarni was higher than that of al-Halaj. Now, this is to do with the issue of walaya and degrees of walaya. Okay, good. So now, coming back to Sayyidina Shith alayhi salam, what does his name mean, if anyone knows?
منة أو عطاء.
Yeah. In the Hebrew, one of the understandings, now I'm not an expert of the subject, so don't take my word for it, but one of the understandings of the meanings of the name Sheath is to be a badil, a substitute. Why might Sheath have been called a substitute or a badil? For what? Because Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, he had two children before Sayyidina Sheath. Who were they? Habil and Qabil, right? Abel and Cain. Yes. And what happened between those two?
They fought. One killed the other.
It was Qabil who killed Habil. And this was because they both offered a sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sacrifice of Habil was accepted, and the sacrifice of Qabil was rejected. So he became jealous and killed them. And then Habil says something extraordinary, as you remember from the Quran. It says, oh my brother, if you raise your hand against me to kill me, I will not raise my hand against you to kill you. This is why Sheikh Hamza Yusuf says that probably what this means is that the asl, the root of our Sharia, is non-violence. The root also of our Sharia is non-violence, right? That's the foundation of the Sharia, non-violence, which is a really interesting observation. So then what the commentators of the Fusus say is that Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam was in the grips and depths of grief, and he was weeping and filled with grief. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he then gave him a gift to replace the son who was murdered, and that son was Sayyidina Shith alayhi salam. And they say that he was given his own books, divine books that were bestowed upon him from Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam. Gabriel, so he had his own books from Gabriel. Well, Allahu A'lam. But so that is what Sayyidina Sheath is. So this is the haqiqah, this is the reality of his ruh. Everything in the cosmos to do with gifts comes from him. Everything to do with gifts in the cosmos comes through his haqiqah. And this is one of the reasons why the title of the fuss is to do with, what is the title again? في
فص حكمة في كلمة شيثية.
في كلمة yes, but حكمة نفثية. حكمة نفثية. Yes, thank you. And what is the nafath? The nafath is a kind of breath in which there is moisture, rutuba, but it involves like a little bit of spittle. And so the reason he is associated with the nafathiyya, the reality of this breathing, is because it is connected to what cosmic reality that resembles breathing? The cosmic reality of the nafas al-Rahman. So each Nabi is a symbol for a cosmic reality. So Sayyidina Shir alayhi salam, he corresponds to what is called the martaba ta'ayyun, right? The level and degree of identification to the nafas al-Rahman. And hence there's a connection between those two breaths. And just as creation is a free gift, so that connects to him because he himself was a free gift, freely given to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And the other reason for the title of the fuss is because part of the ulum that's given to the anbiya, like Sayyidina Shir alayhi salam, was given to him personally. So he was also a nabi alayhi salam. Part of the gifts that were given to him, nafathiyya with a tha, nafathiyya, yes. So, which is a particular form of breathing outwards. So in English, in English, one of the translations, yes, nafathiyya, yes. So one of the translations is the wisdom of expiration, breathing out, but with a little bit of spittle. So it's a kind of breathing outwards, which connects to nafas al-Rahman. Okay. Where was I? So one of the ulum that was given to Sayyidina Shir alayhi salam is there's also different kinds of, you have the ability to produce effects on the cosmos and the universe through your breathing out, through what is called a spiritual breath by using certain words and incantations. It resembles sihr, it's not sihr. It's one of the sciences given to the anbiya. In fact, sometimes sihr sorcery can be a misused branch of a true root, and also ruqya, yes, can be a misused branch of which goes back to a true root, which is a prophetic science in this case, the science of breathing out. Now, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam has something similar. He has a similar science that's specific to him too. When you utter certain words, you can produce effects on the cosmos, right? And so by uttering certain names in a certain way, you can make certain things happen by focusing your attention on that thing. Jedi style. Now, that's his wisdom. So coming back to interesting. The white magic, yes, maybe, yes. But also the magicians were also called nafathat. There you go. Jazakallah khairan. I'll also say something else to you as well, Amira. That's a really good point. Sorcery is not in itself a pejorative science. Sorcery itself is not in itself a negative science, not by itself. It's the way it's used. This is why in the Quran, when the sorcerers, the sahirun or the sahar, submit to Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam, and they say, we submit ourselves to Rabba Musa wa Harun wa hu Rabb al-Alamin. So we submit ourselves to the Lord of Moses and Aaron. Allah, after that ayah, that means now they've left Pharaoh, they've left Pharaoh. After that ayah, the Quran continues to call them sorcerers. That is one of the proofs that it's not a bad thing in itself. Otherwise, the Quran would change their name. now that they've done tawbah. You see? So it's not an evil science in and of itself, but it's a question of how it's used. It is a question of how it is used. Now, because of what you're talking about, since we're on the topic of magic, and this is probably related to the fuss as well, this reminds me of another Greek magician, but he's not really a magician in the base sense of the word. He's not, and exactly, he's got Surah Al-Falaq as well. Jazakallah khairan, exactly. That's exactly it. Exactly. So there is a Greek magician, but not in the crude sense of the word, who is a real magician who understands some of the realities. And his name is Empedocles, not Gandalf and Saruman. I apologize. His name is Empedocles. And anyone who has read the books of Pierre Kingsley will have also come across this. And that is, Empedocles was given a gift and a science. Well, he was given a science, which was specifically a tariqah towards, it was a path and a way towards realization of ma'rifat Allah. He was given a way, and he had a way towards ma'rifat Allah. And how is this, what is this path exactly? Well, Pierre Kingsley takes you on a labyrinth route before he gets to the answer towards the end of the book. But once you get to the answer, he says it's quite simple. And Nafath al-Ruh is also used to indicate wahy as well. Absolutely. Yes. And exactly, there are good wizards and bad wizards. Well, that's why you mentioned Gandalf and Saruman. Jazakallah khair. Sorry, I didn't understand that. Thank you, Noor. That's exactly it. Yeah, definitely. So Empedocles mentions that if you want to obtain realization of your own divinity within yourself, since you find the wish of God in any direction you turn, including yourself, then the science towards that is quite simple. It's actually really simple, but also extremely hard to do if you are not serious about this path, if you don't dedicate yourself to this path. But the doing of it is really simple. And again, this you'll also find in Maulana Rumi's poetry, which is that anything that comes to you in existence, you treat it as a gift. Anything that comes to you in existence, you take it as a gift that is for you alone. And you take it as a gift that was meant specifically for you. And you contemplate what is the meaning of this gift for you, and you don't reject it. When you do that, and CD Petro, or C Joshua, if I've misexplained it, please let me know. But if you take that path seriously, and yes, each gift is a gift from beyond, exactly. If you take it seriously, then you will attain realization of your divinity very quickly, very easily, very quickly. It is that simple. And that is why Maulana Rumi says, concerning your thoughts and your feelings and the waridat, the spiritual visitors, quite literally, a warid is a visitor. The spiritual visitors that come into your heart, you receive them and you take them as guests. And of course, a guest also means he has a limited time period. When it's time for him to go, he goes, like grief and sorrow, for example, and pain, for example. But each one has their haqq, their right to visit you. And when you treat each guest appropriately and you give the guest its haqq, then there's a reward for that. All right? The warid and the warid, yes, absolutely. So that's the path of Empedocles, right? So it cannot be a coincidence that you find these other connections between other traditions. So when you do, whether it's Greek pagan tradition or some other tradition, that when it comes to the science of gifts, it goes back to who? Sayyidina Shith alayhi salam. So that means like Empedocles would have received that science through the spiritual reality of sheath. He would have received that science through what's called the mishkat. And that's a really interesting word. This word mishkat, which we'll come across in the fuss as well. You receive it through the mishkat of Sayyidina Sheath alayhi salam. Because no science comes from nowhere. So the science of gifts comes from one of the prophets. It comes from the spiritual reality of Sayyidina Sheath alayhi salam. Yes. And also Sayyidina Nabulsi alayhi salam is also correct. Yes, there is a connection between Sayyidina Sheath and Isa alayhi salam as well. Yes, completely. So now Ibn Arabi is looking into categorizing the different ways of asking for things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mina, if you could share what it was that Sayyidina Nabulsi said. I know you've written it in Arabic.
Do you want me to translate?
Or just say from your own words what it is. I can also translate, but since you've already done it, tell us what he says.
He was saying, he was also making this connection that I didn't fully understand until you spoke about nafs. He made a comparison between nafs or nafas and nafkh.
Yes.
One of them is more related to the spiritual, which has more rutuba in it. And then nafkh is mulk, as Nabulsi says. And nafas is connected to wahy and divine inspiration. And then he was saying that that Adam alayhi salam, when he was يعني with Sayyida Hawa, and when his nutfa, again, it's really hard for me to translate those words. What does nutfa mean?
His seed.
When his seed went into Sayyida Hawa, it was a form of nafas, just like Sayyidina Isa with the situation between Sayyida Maryam and Sayyidina Gibreel, as he also breathed into her womb.
Yes.
And in Sayyidina Adam's case, it was a form of wahy. And hence, Sayyidina Sheath is similar to Sayyidina Isa in the sense that he is the bottom form of Kalimatullah. Sayyidina Sheath is the bottom form of Kalimatullah, and Sayyidina Isa is the Zahir form.
SubhanAllah.
The Zahir form of Kalimatullah.
How crazy is that? SubhanAllah. How crazy is that? Because besides this obvious, Jazakallah khairan, thank you so much for this beautiful piece of information and connection. What is crazy about that is that one of the names in Hebrew for Sheath alayhi salam isn't just substitute or badil. One of the meanings of his name is also anointed.
SubhanAllah.
Anointed, of course, and obviously the name of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam is al-Masih, the anointed one. I mean, anointed implies that you're chosen, but the word just means anointed, like someone's anointed your head. But yes, exactly. Thank you. It definitely implies that you've been chosen, but that means there's obviously this very important cyclical relationship. There's a cyclical relationship between Sayyidina Sheath and Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, because just as Sayyidina Sheath alayhi salam really begins, you could call him one of the fathers of mankind. Obviously, that title belongs to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, who al-Ab al-Kabir, he's the great father. Sayyidina Sheath is from where the progeny starts, really, because it doesn't start from Habil or Qabil. Habil is killed, Abel is killed, and Cain is obviously, and Qabil is obviously not a good place for humanity to start from. So it really begins with Sheath. alayhi salam. So if he, in a sense, inaugurates the human cycle, and he begins it, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, one of his roles at the end of time, so khalas, we've come to the subject, so I'll just talk about the subject now that we've come to it. One of his roles towards the end of time is to be what? Who can tell me? When he comes back, what does he come back in his role? In what capacity? In what role? Who wants to take a stab? Yes, sure. He is, of course, Masih who fights the Masih Dajjal, obviously. Yes, absolutely. What else? He is one of the Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam is, yes, he's also a ruler. Yes, exactly. He rules according to the Sharia of Muhammad alayhi salam when he comes back at the end of time. But he is also what is called the seal of universal sainthood. He's also al-Khatam, Khatam walay al-Amma, walaysa Khatam walay al-Khassa. So one of the most important topics that is going to be discussed in this chapter, which is also in the Futuhat, by the way. It's important to make these connections because then we get into the problem of what's fabricated or not. There's lots of interconnections. This idea is validated in the Futuhat itself, okay? Well, this is a very interesting question, Irvina. Thank you for bringing it up. There are awliya after him. There have to be. Because what do we say about the whole purpose of creation in Adam alayhi salam? The whole project of human creation discussed in Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam is that we were made to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give him his due. And how do you worship him? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. Or if you finish the ayah, لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And Arfan, because Sayyidina Ibn Abbas, who was ترجمان القرآن, what does he say? لِيَعْبُدُونِ means لِيَعْرِفُونِ. It means to know me. So, who knows Allah as ma'rifah of him? The awliya. They're the ones, and they're the reason that we stay alive on this earth without exaggeration. And this is not an offense towards Aqidah or the science of Aqidah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who's maintaining creation, but He has a reason for maintaining it. And that's because of His awliya. If it weren't for them, He will not maintain creation. So this is precisely why, as Mina said, when the last wali is born, that story is mentioned at the end of this fuss. That story is mentioned at the end of this fuss. He is born in China with a twin sister. So this is through Kashf. Sheikh Al-Akbar knows this. And he even tells you who comes out of the womb first. He mentions that detail probably to indicate how much of a Kashf he had. And so this wali, he will be upon the heart of Sayyidina Shith alayhi salam. What does it mean to be on the heart or on the foot of a Nabi? These are technical terms, and there's a subtle distinction between them. سوف يكون على قلب الشيخ عليه السلام, and then another wali you could say هو على قدم X Nabi, this Nabi, certain Nabi. The one who is upon the footstep of a Nabi, he's falling on his footsteps. And by falling on his footsteps, he gains the sciences that he gains from by virtue of following him, by virtue of ittiba' al-Nabi. And ala qalb al-Nabi is he's realizing the ma'rifah that this Nabi has, by virtue of practicing the practices that this particular Nabi has. So he attains to realization of the ulum and sciences that this Nabi had by virtue of following him. So this wali who is born at the end of time in China will be upon the qalb of Sayyidina Shith alayhi salam. And this is a time, when we say at the end of time, this is after Isa and after Masih Dajjal, way after. So this is really far, 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 far after. And this is really towards the end of time. And there's no Quran, there's no Kaaba, there's no Islam. No one remembers who Rasulullah is. It's really that time period. So then he is born, and the people are like animals. They have no iman whatsoever. He calls them to God. Whoever listens to him, listens to him. Whoever doesn't listen to him, does not listen to him. And then the Shaykh Al-Akbar mentions this in the Futuhat, if I'm not mistaken. I'll go double check. That Allah will send a wind that is sweet as honey. And it will make them pass away, and he takes them onto him. And then the hour will dawn upon the rest of mankind, and that's when the day of judgment will happen. Because there's no more awliya. Because the wali is the person who is a connecting rope between heaven and earth. He is the one, or she's the one, can be she, by the way, for sure. She is the one who connects heaven and earth together, like a connecting rope. Without this connecting rope, the two are splits apart, and then the cosmos falls into chaos. And there's no more order. So the creation is folded in on itself, and then the resurrection begins. So that is what were we talking about before? We were talking about the khatam. Okay? So obviously, this wali, this Chinese wali who is upon the hearts of Sayyidina Shid alayhi salam, he's khatam al-awlad. Quite literally. He seals the children. There's no more children after him. Now, Irvina asked a question. So this is technically correct. Not only is there no more saints after this wali, there's no more people, period, after this wali. But in the case of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, I'll come back to him. In the case of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, he comes back as the Khatam al-Walaya al-Amma, the seal of general sainthood. So there are saints after him. Otherwise, the world would end. But there will be no saint who can reach his station. He will seal off access to the higher levels of wilaya. So the highest levels of wilaya are gone after him. After him, it's done. You only have lower levels of wilaya. And then he rules the creation through the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there is a cyclical connection now between Sayyidina Shir alayhi salam, who begins the creation after Sayyidina Adam, and Sayyidina Isa, who inaugurates the end of those levels of wilaya, and therefore creation as well. So it's really interesting to make that connection between those two names, if they're both anointed, if that is indeed the case. In Hebrew, one of his names means anointed, Sayyidina Shir alayhi salam. It would be interesting to make that connection. Now, there is a third Khatam al-Awliya. So if Sayyidina Isa is Khatam al-Amma, then the third Khatam is Khatam al-Walaya al-Muhammadiyya al-Khassa, the seal of Muhammadan sainthood. And this particular Khatam al-Awliya is very interesting. So before I get into that, since now we're into the subject, which is a little bit out of place, I apologize for that, because it comes up again in the fuss itself. Who was the first person to talk about Khatam al-Awliya? Because Shaykh Al-Akbar is not the first person. Who is the first person to talk about the Khatam al-Awliya? He is Sayyidina Hakim al-Tirmidhi. If you don't know who he is, tell me. If you don't know who he is. Hakim al-Tirmidhi is one of the most famous philosophers Sufis. And he has written a book called the Khatam al-Awliya. And it is a book that is actually a questionnaire, believe it or not. Because he felt that during his time, too many people were calling themselves awliya, awliya, awliya. So he said, I'm tired of people calling themselves and giving themselves names that they may not understand the import and the implications of. So I'm gonna write a questionnaire. It's a little test. And whoever claims to be an actual wali Allah, right? He should be able to answer my questions. So he literally drew up a series of questions, a questionnaire that acted as a challenge to people across the ages. And it was like a duel. It was a duel for other saints across the ages and a challenge to them to see if they'd be able to answer them or not. The first person I'm aware of who answered these series of questions was none other than Sheikh al-Akbar. After him, Sheikh Ahmed al-Tijani also answered the questions as well. But really, the first person to have answered them and taken on the challenge was none other than Sheikh al-Akbar himself. So he starts answering them. Now, Hakim al-Tirmidhi, and in fact, so actually, his entire set of answers is contained in the Futuhat al-Makki as well, chapter 73 of the Futuhat. Now, Hakim Tirmidhi himself is a very special person. He tells you about his dreams and the dreams his wife had of him as well. And there's a really good book on that, translated into English. So one of the dreams that Hakim Tirmidhi has is that it describes the role of the Khatam al-Awliya. And you have seen the same story in other places, like in the poetry of Mawlana Rumi. Like, it goes like this. There is a city, and the people in the city are being besieged. And they're being besieged by a powerful and mighty chief. And so this chief, and the people are suffering terribly from the siege. Their mouths are dry, parched, thirsty from lack of drink of water, and they're suffering terribly. And so the chief is a symbol for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And he's asking for them to bring him the khatam, the ring, who is a symbol, and the ring itself is a symbol for the khatam al-awliya. And so when he has this dream, Hakim Tirmidhi, like, it really shakes him up. It's a very powerful dream. And the whole scenario is, of course, an allusion to the Day of Judgment as well, I think. So then the Sheikh al-Akbar answers the questions in this questionnaire about who is the Khatam al-Awliya, and specifically who is the Khatam al-Awliya Muhammadiyya. Maybe I'll just preempt this now. Does anyone have any idea who the Khatam al-Awliya Muhammadiyya is?
Is it the Mahdi?
That's so interesting. Haider Amuli thought so. But we disagree with Haider Amuli alayhi salam, even though we give him his ihtiram and respect. If you go the way of Sheikh Abdul Baqi Miftah, there's actually five khawatim. There's actually five of them, not just three. And then that would make the Mahdi one of them. Very interesting answer. Yes. So Haider Amuli would think it's him. The followers of Sheikh al-Akbar's school would have a different answer. Sayyidina Isa, Sayyidina Isa, don't forget, he is the what? Khatam Walaya al-Amma. But who's the Khatam Walaya Muhammadiyya? Khatam Walaya al-Khasa. Keep thinking about it, and I will keep talking about it. So the Sheikh al-Akbar says that the property, right? The property, the attribute, the characteristic of this Muhammadan seal is this. So first of all, he seals off the Muhammadan knowledge. There is no one in creation more knowledgeable about Allah than him, right? So I'll read to you a paragraph that is contained from the Khatam al-Awliya, Hakim Tirmidhi, that describes this Khatam al-Awliya. So it is this. He is a servant whom God has taken into his charge. He is under the divine aegis. He speaks through God, hears through God. He listens, sees, acts, and meditates through God. God has made him famous throughout the world. and has established him as the Imam of created beings. He is the keeper of the emblem of the awliya, the surety of the inhabitants of the earth, the spectacle of the beings of heaven. He is the flower of paradise, chosen one of God, the object of his gaze. He is the mine of his secrets, the scourge of his justice. Through him, God quickens hearts. Through him, he guides created beings along the way. Through him, he enforces the divine laws. This being is the key to the right direction, the flaming torch of the earth, guardian of the registers of the saints, and their guide. He alone gives God the praises that are due to him. He is the Lord of the saints. He is the wisest of the wise. And as C.D. Petro has preempted, yes, indeed, the Shaykh al-Akbar at least, and the followers of his school of thought in general, not all of them, but in general, believe that the Shaykh al-Akbar himself is the seal of Muhammadan sainthood. And he is that very person. And the Shaykh al-Akbar, he is a bit ambiguous about it in the Futuhat al-Makkiyah. But then his followers say something interesting, and he himself says something interesting. In his diwan of poetry, in his poetry, he gives it away. And he says, and he claims for himself the role of seal of Muhammadan sainthood for himself. And this is shown throughout his life. If you attend my course on his life, you'll see that we'll come to the subject in the third week of the course. As it's shown in his life that he's the seal, or at least he claims for himself as being the seal of Muhammadan sainthood. That's shown throughout his visions and events in his life. Now, Znira made a very interesting point. Maybe other people in history have tried to claim this role for themselves. It's not our job to judge them. But for the Shaykh al-Akbar himself, he is specific in that there's only one person for that role. And whoever you think it is, it's up to you. Whether you think it's Imam Mahdi alayhi salam or Sayyidina Shaykh al-Akbar. But there's only one person for that role. What Zanira, I think, also, alludes to, or possibly could be alluding to as well, or at least what she's reminding me of, is that we all have something called our own microcosm. And the Shaykh al-Akbar says this explicitly. Al-alam al-saghir, that's us. We contain the entire universe, without exaggeration. So a woman or another man could do this. So Shaykh al-Akbar says, whenever I talk about these things, I'm talking about the kutub, I'm talking about the seal, the khatam, he says this very explicitly. I am telling you about these things so that you can find them in your own inner world in yourself. And you can do tahqiq of these things in yourself. Where is your inner prophet? Where is your inner saint? Where is your inner being? Your inner spirit, your inner this, your inner that, your inner seal. Everyone has the potential to realize their own inner seal. That you can do. Yes. Subhanallah. And what you're saying about Khalid Nabahan, Allah yarhamu, he's probably one of the awliya himself, even if he doesn't know it. Because what these people go through is something that the mind cannot comprehend. So let's not dwell on that topic too much. But yes, like whatever the maqam of those people are, only Allah knows. After how much they suffered, only Allah knows. And what exactly is happening there. So what now Mina has just said, which is correct. This is why he is being ambiguous in the Futuhat. Not only does Shaykh al-Akbar says that the seal of Muhammadan sainthood lived during his own time period, but the Shaykh al-Akbar took his companions, his ashab and sahaba, to meet him. This is a mysterious form of phrasing. He's using it to mask his role in the Futuhat. I don't know why. It could be that he doesn't want people reading the Futuhat to know that. It's very possible. But when he says that he took his companions to meet him, he means himself. He himself claimed the role of being the seal of Muhammadan sainthood for himself. So what does Mu'ayyid al-Jandi say? What does Jandi say? The famous commentator of the Fusus al-Hikam after Sayyidina Salahuddin al-Qunawi. What does he say? He says that what the Shaykh al-Akbar used to show to his companions, his close students, was what? The Khatam al-Rasul and Khatam al-Anbiya, Rasulullah, what did he have on his back? Yeah, he had something on. Yes. He had a sign. He had a mole, but it's not one mole. They say it's like a cluster of little ones that was found between his shoulder blades, and that is the sign of him being Khatam al-Anbiya sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's his sign. What does Shaykh al-Akbar have according to Jandi? In the same spot that Rasulullah has the sign of the Khatam al-Nubuwah, which is an object or a series of little ones that protrudes outwards, the Shaykh al-Akbar has a hole in relief that goes inwards, which is the sign of the Khatam al-Walaya Muhammadiyya. Because just as Rasulullah was a Nabi outwardly, the hidden face of Muhammad, which is his walaya, was manifest to the Shaykh al-Akbar. That's why the Shaykh al-Akbar has a seal on his back that goes inwards. It's concave, if you understood that. It's not convex, it's concave, which symbolizes the secrets that are hidden in the Sharia of Muhammad and hidden in his Nabuwah. And so he would show to his companions as well, Shaykh al-Akbar. He would show to his companions. Now, the Shaykh al-Akbar says this: the property and the characteristic of the seal of the saints is that, and it's like, sorry, why is this in this chapter? I can explain afterwards as well, because it's connected to the idea of gifts. Just as Rasulullah was given what's called the Jawami' al-Kalam, the all-comprehensive words, which needs an explanation itself, the Shaykh al-Akbar was given the Mawahib al-Hikam, Mawahib al-Hikam, which is why this issue belongs in this fuss, which is to do with gifts. So the Shaykh al-Akbar says that the Khatam al-Awliya will have a vision. That is a characteristic. The vision is this: he sees a vision of the Kaaba, and within the Kaaba, he sees that there are 2 bricks missing. What does that vision remind you of from the seerah of Rasulullah? MashaAllah, Petro, you could certainly be right, because it's probably like smaller than an egg. Yeah, exactly. MashaAllah, beautiful connection. What does this remind you of in the seerah? Before Rasulullah was a Nabi, and they were having a dispute around the Kaaba. What was the dispute?
الحجر الأسود. Who placed الحجر الأسود? The black stone?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
And
they were
في العرب. Huh?
Yes. Jazakallah khairan. Yes.
Okay.
The people in Quraysh were arguing who would have the honor of setting in the stone which would seal the Kaaba. Right? So that was one stone. In the vision, the Khatam al-Awliya will have this vision of 2 stones being missing. And he will get to seal and set in both stones. It is a Kaaba that is made up of alternating bricks of gold and silver. It is a Kaaba made up of gold and silver bricks, alternating between one and the other. The silver bricks represent Nubuwah, and the golden bricks represent Walaya. The golden bricks represent Walaya, and the silver bricks represent Nubuwah. The silver bricks represent the Sharia of the Prophet, and the golden bricks, the Ma'rifah and Walaya. So the seal, he will see himself being put in place He himself is put in place in the missing places of the silver brick and the golden brick. So he seals the religion. He seals the Kaaba. But most of all, he seals the knowledge of Muhammadan sainthood. And that is a role that the Shaykh al-Akbar claimed for himself. He has this vision. So it means he himself had that vision, obviously. And so the seal of Muhammadan sainthood is the one who not only totalizes within himself the knowledge of all the knowledge of Rasulullah and the ulum al-Muhammadiyya, the Muhammadan sciences, but he gathers within himself the sciences of every single saint and every single prophet. And now I'll mention a point that requires a great deal of explanation, but we will not explain today. We can do it another time, because it is a controversial point that needs some proper understanding. But one of the things he says is that no one amongst creation has more knowledge of God than the seal of Muhammadan sainthood. No one amongst creation has more knowledge of God than this Muhammadan sainthood. And so even to the extent that the prophets themselves are saints, because don't forget, every prophet is a saint, and every messenger is a prophet and saint. Every prophet will draw, and every messenger will draw his saintly knowledge from the mishkat of the seal of Muhammadan sainthood. Every single one of them. They take it from him. Even the prophets, with respect to their wilayah, not with respect to their nubuwah. With respect to their nubuwah, they don't take their nubuwah from his mishkat. Which mishkat do they take their knowledge of nubuwah from? They take it from the mishkat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's where they get it from. Now, this is a controversial point that has been the source of much debate and spilt much ink. And it has a clear explanation. So I think I'm going to save that clear explanation for another time, because I feel like we are running out of time. Are we not, see Joshua?
Yeah, it probably would be a good moment to pause, and if anybody has any questions or thoughts they can share, and then we can wrap it up in about 10, 15 minutes, inshallah.
Okay, brilliant. But just to answer Amira's question, yes, this is a call for ourselves. I completely agree with you there. The Khatam al-Awliya, there are awliya after him, because that's why the Shaykh al-Akbar differentiates between wilaya khasa and wilaya amma. Khatam wilaya khasa and khatam wilaya amma. They seal certain levels of sainthood. They cannot seal wilaya mutlaqan, because if they were to seal wilaya mutlaqan, the world would come to an end, period.
I think Abdullah has his hand raised.
Please, Bismillah. I cannot
Yeah.
see your hands. I apologize. Bismillah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. I think
You're very
I had a question regarding the word nafith in Arabic, which also means precious, I think, and sort of the
Nafis,
linguistic field.
Nafis.
So it's not nafith, it's not with
No.
okay. That clarifies it. And then my second question is regarding the field, that the word hidayah, but also hidayah, a gift in that regard, that guidance. Yeah, because they share the same trilateral root as well. So I wanted to explore that further a little bit, since we are on the topic of gifts. Such, thank you.
You could very well be right. I would need to double check that myself, because I'm not as good at language as CD Ali is, but you could be perfectly right, because there's all sorts of connections that are made by these trilateral roots, and you wouldn't be far off at all. If we do establish connection between guidance and a gift, for sure, all guidance is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That goes without saying. How does this tie together? Is it for us to ask for knowledge such that we can be that seal? No, because the seal is only one person. Only one person can be that seal. If you agree with Sheikh Al-Akbar, that is. And he claimed it for himself. There can only be one seal of Muhammad sainthood. There can only be one seal of awlad, obviously. And there can only be one seal of walaya amma, who Sheikh Al-Akbar argues explicitly is Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. And then Mina's question, what are the 5 ones that Sayyidi al-Baqi mentioned? These 3, Sheikh Al-Akbar, Sayyidina Isa, and then Khatam al-Awlad, and then Sayyidina Mahdi and Imam Mahdi and Imam Ali alayhum as-salam. These are the 5. But for like the detailed explanation, I'd have to like go back and read his books. Imam Mahdi and Imam Ali are the other 2, if you go with that. And so just I want to come back to Arva. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name, if that's correct. Arva. Baba? Okay, can you let me finish the class? Yeah. Can you let me finish the class? Okay, اقعد على تحت. اقعد على تحت. Okay. I thought I locked the door. Anyways, so there we go. I thought I locked the door. I really did. How does this tie together? Is this the knowledge we must ask for and go out trying to obtain? So this is such an excellent question, because the Sheikh Al-Akbar is writing to the he's writing to the Saliks. Thank you, Albi. He is writing to the seekers, because he says somewhere in the fuss, which you'll come across right now, actually, maybe after two sessions, he says, this is the furthest limit of knowledge. This thing I'm describing is the furthest limit of knowledge. Don't try and go any higher than that when it comes to knowledge of God. You will come across it when you come to that section in the Fusus, in Fuss Sheath. When he comes to that section, he'll tell you what it is you're looking for, and not to go beyond that. If really you're from the major saints and you have that kind of himma, then he tells you what to look for and to not go beyond. When it comes to knowledge of God, knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the way we tie this together is that, well, let me have a think about that when I get a minute. I apologize. I do want to think about that. Don't lock the. But I should have.
Yeah, I think Zanita and Ervina have their hands raised.
Please, Bismillah.
I think Zanita was first.
Okay, so I just wanted to go back to the question of like sorcery, magic. So you know how, I don't know, it's just so subtle, because like Josh mentioned, like ruqya is also kind of like very similar energetically, like what we're doing. Like I do ruqya on people, and it's very similar energetically. It's about, you know, the words, like it's the words that heal and change the person's energy, their illness, their whatever issue they're having. And so like it's very subtle. Like recently there's been this sort of like trend on Instagram about like new age spirituality, and sometimes this content pops up that's like, oh, spells for this and spells for that. And when I read them or like just look at them, not that I practice them or anything, but they're just like words, they're just affirmations. They're like, you know, oh, and they're just affirmations. So I'm just struggling to understand what the difference is between that versus just setting an intention with really strong, like himma, you said, or like, you know, the jama'iyya power, and like just gathering your intention. And the other thing is, when you said that Allah continues to call them magicians after they convert, but I just wanted to make a reference to, it's in Surah Taha, ayah 69, and Allah says, 68 and 69, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان قلنا لا تخف إنك أنت الأعلى والق ما في يمينك تلقف ما صنعوا إنما صنعوا كيد ساحر ولا يفلح الساحر حيث أتى. So those are pretty strong words, that the sahir is never going to be successful wherever he goes. So then it looks like all magic is bad, but that's not what he was saying. So I was just wanting some clarification on that.
Let me think about that. Let me think about that ayah and verse. But don't forget, unless I'm mistaken, that verse was spoken before their conversion. if it is the case, but let's double check that, please. If that is the case, that ayah was spoken before the conversion, then it's referring to their sorcery, which they will never attain to any kind of felicity with, when it's done without submission to a prophet. That's the reference. But once you have submitted to a prophet, then as long as the prophet tells you how to use it and you're guided by the prophetic guidance, then it will not lead to wretchedness or damnation, right? It will not lead you astray. As long as it's done according to the prophet's guidance. Now, okay, thank you, Albi. So, okay, so the first part of your question, actually, it's to do with okay, there is a difference between what you're doing, right? As I've understood the way you've explained your process to me, and you know what? I'm gonna lock the door. Just 1 second.
At the khutbah on Friday at the masjid. Yes, I was just sharing the link that Dr. Faris at the khutbah at the masjid here locally on Friday.
Yes.
The Imam was talking about there was a time in which the Prophet ﷺ was sitting in like a halaqah, and and they were passing a bowl of milk around, and he passes it to a child, and he asks the child, can you pass it to, I think it was to Ali, and and the child says no. And and the Imam was just saying that, this is how Rasulullah alayhi salatu like exemplified giving everything, every person its rights, and so even the child, has the rights.
Absolutely.
And so I always get reminded of that when we hear your son, your child's voice on the
Oh gosh.
and how beautifully you always respond, beautiful akhlaq.
Allah barik feek. It may be more to me being on camera and stuff and in front of people. This could be the other motivation, but you're absolutely right, because there is a divine face in children, because the Shaykh al-Akbar also talks about that. But that's a different story about like being in the masjid. Yeah. He also mentions that. Jazakallah khairan, yes. So, mashallah. Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. That's a really beautiful anecdote. Jazakallah khairan, absolutely. Sorry, Zanira, I'm trying to remember the first part of your question. Yes, I remember now. So it's actually different to what you were describing to me beforehand, Zanira, because sorcery would involve the incantation of certain words with a certain order, done with a certain himma. That might be related to what you're doing, but I don't really see it as being identical to what you were describing to me earlier on. This kind of theta healing, if I'm not mistaken. Sorcery is involved with the manipulation of matter, and the manipulation of certain spiritual realities to affect matter. What I understood from your discipline is that it tries not to use manipulation, whereas you're going to Allah to ask him for permission for healing. Sorcery doesn't use that route. Sorcery uses a different route, which is direct manipulation of matter through the incantation of certain words with a certain degree of himma. That's different. Even if you use himma, but you're going to Allah for permission, that's different. That's a fundamental difference. So that's how I'd answer your question.
Ervina has her hand raised too, and then we'll have to end.
Yeah, bismillah. Let's go.
Since the beginning of this session, I just recall the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says, when you give gifts to each other, the love increases. Or if you want for the love to increase, give gifts to each other. How do you connect this with this fuss? I was wondering.
SubhanAllah, you tell me, mashallah. Because when we give gifts to each other, the idea behind that is to bring this kind of happiness into other people's hearts and into each other's hearts. And then we increase our connection with one another and love one another, especially when two people have had a fight and a disagreement. The tradition is to bring them a gift and reconciliation. So isn't that the case that if the cosmos is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and him maintaining the cosmos is a gift, then it's an enactment of maintaining the cosmos by maintaining ourselves?
And increasing our love towards
and
him.
increasing our love. Yes, exactly. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you.
Maybe, okay, one more finally. Noor has her hand raised.
Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum. So,
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
yeah, my question goes back to the healing through mixing Quran with the flesh and blood that you mentioned.
Yes.
First, from the approaches in the psychological realm. And I want to add to that the discussion we're having right now, the incantations that one makes as ruqya. Because in a lot of trauma processing that I've been part of, a lot of times it's the chanting of the words, saying, for example, it was not my mistake as a kid who did something, blah, that's repeated again and again until it solidifies in our base path. So how do you say that it's different from psychological realm and Quran with flesh and blood?
Well, for starters, doesn't the Quran have a barakah that normal words don't?
Yes, of course. Alhamdulillah, no doubt about it.
That might be one way it differs. The other way is that besides the fact that it has like this innate barakah with whatever you recite, the Quran has the quality of jami'iyya, but the words you recite to yourself or to someone else, not on this topic, any topic in general, may not have the quality of jami'iyya, which is the quality of all comprehensiveness and gatheringness. So the Quran contains many things in one word, many things in one ayah, many things in one paragraph, many things in one surah, because it brings all these haqa'iq together under one umbrella, under one spiritual matrix, which is why it's called al-Kitab, that gives birth to other things. That is what you will see throughout the Fusus al-Hikam, this quality of gathering, this jam'iyya that the Quran has. Normal words do not necessarily have to have that. A normal word could have the quality of separation, separating things, or separating you from something else. But that's not the Quran's quality. It's to bring things together. That's the meaning of the word Quran, to that which brings together.
Inshallah. Thank you.
All right, well,
Allah yabarak fikum.
Well, yeah, completely. Thank you for leading us today and for all the gems you dropped on us. And to everybody else, Jazakumullah khairan for all your questions and attention. And yeah, you all have a beautiful rest of your day, your night, your week, inshallah, until next Sunday.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Allah yabarak fikum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
شكرا السلام عليكم جزاكم الله خير
Allah yabarak fikum. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.